The Democrats are trying everything in their power to stop the American people from knowing exactly how many illegal immigrants are living in this country. And of course, this is what we're seeing be discussed over here in the House with Representative Eli Crane and Andy Biggs completely owning Representative Emily Randall on this topic. But before we begin, don't forget to like, share, comment, subscribe on this video so we can the algorithms. Here we go.
I'm going to start by reiterating the fact that this policy is unconstitutional. It was proven unconstitutional and struck down by the Supreme Court when the Trump administration attempted to do this exact thing in Trump's first term. They wanted to erase undocumented people and non-citizens from the census, from our communities, from the requirement that we fund and represent all of our constituents as laid out in the Constitution. And the Supreme Court struck that attempt down. Why would we waste our time trying again? Why would we waste our time trying to pass an unconstitutional policy that is clearly unconstitutional, that is clearly trying to erase the existence of people who are simply here in this country? And what I hear every day is an attempt to attack and tear down this document that helped craft and stabilize our country. We're here to fight for every single person who lives in our country, to make sure they have fair representation, and to make sure that we are funding our states adequately. We're not here to try and rig elections so that more Republicans win. Mr. Chair, I yield back.
Yields back. Chair recognizes Mr. Crane from Arizona.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My colleague just said we're not here to rig elections to make sure that Republicans win more elections. That's exactly what you guys are trying to do. You guys are trying to rig elections. You guys in the last administration let in between 10 to 15 million illegal aliens. I also want to point out that you guys keep referencing the Constitution. I got some Constitution for you. How about Article 4, Section 4 of the Constitution? It requires that the federal government protect each state from invasion. That's something clearly you guys did not do while you had the presidency. And now that we have these millions of illegal aliens in this country, we're just simply asking that we put a question on the census, are you an American citizen? And of course you guys don't want to do that, because you know that if we do that and the American people find out exactly how many illegal aliens are in this country and voting, they're going to be as appalled as we see each and every day. And you guys don't want that. And they're not allowed to vote. And you guys try and block every single effort that we make in this House to stop illegal aliens from voting. You guys blocked the SAVE Act as well. That's exactly what this is. You guys are trying to rig elections, and we're trying to stop it. And we're not going to apologize for it. So I'm in full support of this bill. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Would you gentleman yield to me?
Yeah, I would yield to Mr. Biggs.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So we just heard reference to the Supreme Court and its decision in Commerce versus New York that came out in 2019, as if that was conclusive on the matter. Well, if you're okay with that, then I will accept that, because what the Supreme Court said is you can ask a citizenship question. They said you can. It is constitutionally appropriate. What isn't appropriate is the way that the Commerce Department didn't adhere to the APA. That's what they said. Said you can ask the citizenship question, but you're going to have to deal with the APA, the Administrative Procedural Act. And if you do what you did then you got a problem, because they didn't really adhere to it. They didn't have a great reason. They didn't follow the rules. They didn't follow the timelines. But the majority opinion there said you can ask this question. So this bill is actually constitutional if you're accepting the rationale of the Supreme Court, and it's affirming in part and reversing in part, which is what happened in 2019.
So as usual, the Democrat Emily Randall is misguided on every single thing she said, because what we're talking about here is the Equal Representation Act, right? Republicans are trying to move this through Congress that says, hey, on the census, we're going to go ahead and add back in the citizenship question so it's present on every single questionnaire. And of course, we're going to have proper reapportionment of U.S. representatives. So that sounds like a great idea to me. But we're going to have Emily over here saying, you know what? It's not constitutional. We have to make sure we have fair representation. Okay, but luckily we have Eli Crane saying, you know what? I've got some constitution for you. All right. It is the job of the federal government to go ahead and protect all of the states from invasion. Now, of course, how do you want to classify an invasion? I would say 20 million people coming over the border in 4 years, and we don't know who they are, and they're mostly young men. That qualifies as an invasion. However, the same Democrats who are now coming out of the woodwork to say, oh, Republicans are ignoring the Constitution, even though we're not, are the same Democrats who did ignore federal law and currently flout federal law. These are the same people who don't want federal agents going into cities and, of course, arresting and deporting illegal immigrants. All right. So, of course, it's only convenient for them to have the law on their side when it suits their purposes, even though the law isn't on their side, as was pointed out by Andy Biggs. All right. Because you had Emily Randall coming out and saying, oh, guess what? The Supreme Court already decided this issue. Back in 2019, they said you can't put the citizenship question on the census, which, of course, in my opinion, is completely ridiculous. However, Andy Biggs reminds everybody, hey, what was the actual ruling in that case? Well, if you come over here, you can notice that, yes, in a 5-4 majority ruling, Chief Justice Roberts joined the liberals in finding that the administration's justification for the addition that the data was necessary for the Department of Justice to enforce the Voting Rights Act was contrived. They suggested that the Secretary Ross's underlying motivation was political and the justification was a pretext. Okay, so they said they didn't like the reason why we wanted to go ahead and put the citizenship question back on the census, which in my mind sounds pretty stupid, because obviously the citizenship question was on the census from 1820 all the way up until 1950. Then it was removed and then added back in on the long form in 1970, but then it was removed again in 2005. But it wasn't removed because it was unconstitutional. They just moved it to a different form, which I think is a mistake, because the census itself specifically is used for the apportionment of representatives. Okay, so now we're trying to bring it back. And this, of course, is where the second part of what Andy Biggs comes into play. At the same time, the court also split 5-4 with Chief Justice Roberts joining the conservatives on whether adding a citizenship question would be permissible in the first place. And the court held that asking about citizenship is allowed under both the Constitution and the Census Act, so long as the government offered an appropriate rationale. So yes, it is completely legal to ask a citizenship question on the census. However, what's the purpose of this bill then? Well, hopefully we won't run into the same issues we did back in 2019 with John Roberts flip-flopping all over the place on something that obviously is legal and should be appropriate for a country to determine who is representing who. Because we have to ask ourselves the very simple question: why are the Democrats fighting so hard to keep every single illegal immigrant in this country, while at the same time fighting so hard to make sure we don't know how many of them there are? Because you'll always hear the Democrats harping about, oh, illegal immigration, it's fine. They just want to be here to make a better life. And we totally didn't open up the border to, of course, swing states and swing elections, because clearly illegal immigrants can't vote. But we've talked about this at length before. So as much as the Democrats want to say, oh, it doesn't happen, we all know that it does, because we've seen these stories happen over and over and over again. And thank goodness we have people like Representative Biggs and Representative Kane pointing out the truth for the American people to see. And thank you very much for watching. Don't forget to like, share, comment, subscribe, and say hi to your mom for me. Do you like t-shirts? Of course you do. And now you can support the channel by buying an Angry Teacher t-shirt designed by me, Angry Teacher. So if you like America, if you like freedom, if you like liberty, then go ahead and click the link in the description, where all designs, of course, are 100% mother approved. So enjoy yourself and find something you like today.